Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, I thought that we'd bring in a very special guest who has true gifts that help people realize what it is they're searching for when it comes to reaching out to the other side. That is, trying to communicate with you. Just think about a loved one who has passed, or perhaps a best friend, and you want to kind of get yourself either some closure, at least a feeling of comfort that things are a lot better now. Well, our guest today had his own personal journey to realizing his true mission and purpose in life, which was wrought out of the trauma and pain that was experienced as a child. Enduring such things as physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, he did not have positive role models to encourage self-belief and self-love. But when you imagine that by the age of 28, following a selfless moment of compassion extended to a former childhood tormentor, our guest experienced a series of paranormal events that altered his entire life and destiny. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our special guest, psychic Vincent Genna, as we learn about what ghosts may be telling us. Vincent, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Well, Daniel, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, it's pretty exciting, when it comes to thinking about ghosts, some people, in fact, I was just talking with some people about this yesterday, and one or two of the same questions came up. Do I believe in ghosts? And I thought to myself, well, why not? If we truly have a soul, why wouldn't a ghost exist? So let's talk about specifically, what I like to do is, what is the definition of ghost?
Okay. Well, that's actually pretty simple, Daniel. When we leave our physical bodies, we are in spirit form, energies. That's how we were created. Well, normally, most people, when they pass, will see a tunnel of light. That's what you keep hearing from people who have had near-death experiences, right? That light that they went through. And then there were loved ones on the other side greeting them, somebody that they knew. That's actually an express train from our earthly dimensions to the heavenly dimension. And right now we live in the third dimension. That's a physical dimension here on Earth. And closer to the Earth are also the fourth, fifth, sixth, maybe seventh dimension. I don't know exactly how many dimensions there are attached to the Earth and how many are the heavenly ones. But normal person passes, you hop that train, you go through the light, and there you are on the heavenly dimensions. Okay. However, if you die absolutely traumatically, let's say in a war, I live in North Carolina, the Civil War over here was very prominent, or you're a very negative person, very attached to the earth, very physical. When your body dies, your soul will maybe see the light but not go through it, are afraid of it, avoid it. Don't see it at all. Well, now you don't have a body, and now you don't get on that express train, so where are you? You wind up being stuck in the earthly dimensions. And every single religion has some kind of prayer for either purgatory, limbo, that's what they called it then, the souls that committed venial sins in Catholicism, the lost souls, many cultures call them the lost souls, and those are what are ghosts, the souls that never got through the light, never hopped that train, never got into the heavenly dimension, but are here and without physical bodies. Those are ghosts.
Now, what's really fascinating is when we take a look at pop culture, especially media culture, when it comes to understanding ghosts and what they do. You take a look at movies, for instance, and the way ghosts are displayed. They can either be good things or they can be bad things. It just really depends on how we want to approach this whole thing. So as someone takes a look at this, it's much like aliens, for instance. They're coming out to get us or they're coming out to actually share information that we can possibly evolve. So what is your take on this from your experience?
Okay. On both experiences, by the way, Daniel, I've also spoken with aliens, so that I can answer both those questions. Any ghost or lost soul isn't necessarily positive. There are positive spirits that come into the world, be it angels or deceased loved ones that come back down from the heavenly dimension, which is right in front of us anyway, right here around us. They're around to help us. But as far as the ghosts, those entities, they're kind of negative, they're lost, they're frustrated, they're neither here nor there. The only people who can see them are the living. The only people who can help them are the living, but they're not being seen, they're not being heard. So they become mischievous, or they can become annoying, they can become frustrated. Misery enjoys company, so they tend to hang around or go to areas of negativity. I always tell my clients, keep love in your heart, keep love in your home, because I can tell you one thing right now, you guys kind of get into arguments all the time or bring negativity into your household. You're inviting in guests, and you're inviting in those that will exacerbate the negativity. So that's my take on the spirits. And now I'm capable of helping them as well, because they do need to cross over. They do need to see the light and move on. I mean, the oldest ghost that I saw, I actually had a visit in Italy this year, and I was at the Roman Colosseum at night, and I'm standing on a hill by myself, and I'm telling you, Daniel, I still get a little mystified myself and a little shocked when I see things. And all of a sudden, standing next to me is a Roman soldier. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, okay, are you lost? Are you stuck here? And he told me yes. I'm like, wow, that's an awful long time of being stuck around here. What are you, one of the tour guides now? And no, he doesn't know how to move on. And I was asking who he was. He gives me his name. Okay, I Googled it, and sure enough, there was a Roman soldier back in 736 BC, 736 BC, before Christ, who was killed as a traitor to Rome, and so his soul wound up being stuck there. Now, I didn't know anything about him. He tells me this stuff. I look him up, and there he is in Google, and that's the type of stuff that freaks me out. That was the oldest spirit I saw here. That's how long they can be stuck here. So I prayed, and I bring down as best as I can the light for him. I've got guides and angels on the other side I use for that, and I hope to help cross him over. I hope I did. I kind of felt like an easing and a peace all of a sudden come around me. So I'm hoping he crossed over, but that's how old they can be, just being stuck here, Daniel.
Now, I understand that you've helped more than 500 people through the dying process. Now, does that mean that you're actually there as they pass?
Well, I was a hospice social worker, and for most of them, the answer is yes. I was holding their hands. I was holding their caregivers' hands. And many times I basically passed on their hand to a deceased loved one who came for them. And many times I saw them leave their bodies, and then they had come back to me to thank me, which was very rewarding, because I wanted to be sure that they were okay, and I know once they got to the other side, they'd be fine. Several of them were so obstinate. I had a 44-year-old woman, very young, who was dying. She was so afraid to die. She was holding on. People don't understand that we can control our deaths more than you can imagine. And even in the process of dying, you can control it. So here she is. Her heart rate and breathing was down to 4 respirations a minute, which is next to nothing. Her heart was hardly breathing, but she was still holding on. And I was trying to convince her to go. Her family was trying to convince her to go, but she felt she was such a bad person that she was going to go to hell, or that she was going to end up someplace bad. She even told me she saw Jesus coming for her. And I said, so why didn't you go with him? And she said, well, I told him to get out of here and leave me alone. I'm like, oh, my gosh. So, yes, I can help as best as I was able to. It was very rewarding because I learned a lot about the living by helping the people who were crossing over and dying. And so it was an amazing experience for me and very humbling, and felt very blessed to touch somebody's soul and be with them during the second most important day in their lives. The first is when they're born, and the second is when they're leaving.
Now, a lot of times, in fact, pretty much all the time, when I have heard stories about someone who sits with a person who dies, they say, and this seems to be a pretty consistent experience, they all of a sudden say, it's okay, and then they pass. And I kind of wonder about that sometimes. Is that something that what happens when the person is dying or actually dies? They say that in order to comfort the person that's sitting there feeling the pain of this experience in the first place?
No, actually not. It's they say that when they do say that, it's not as often as I would like it to be that they feel that peace. It is to let you know they do feel it. They do experience that. When you are in the dying phase and when you're at the end of your life, your defense mechanisms are down. You're not necessarily thinking totally about the people that are around you other than you're grateful that they are there. My mother had that experience. She had Alzheimer's, and she was a very tormented woman through most of her life. We had built a home, my wife and I, to move my parents in with us so that we can take care of them until they passed. And Mom was in the dying process, and she was really holding on. Her mental illness wound up taking over a lot, and she was very agitated through most of the dying process. But in the last moments, after being unconscious for a couple of days, she opened her eyes, and there was visitors, family members in the room with her, and she looked around the room, but she wanted to catch my eyes. She had tormented me a lot in my life, but I tried to help her at the end for her soul's purpose, not to prove that I was a good son or anything. And she caught my eye, and all of a sudden there was a smile, a very small smile on her face, and a tear came down her eye. And I knew in that given moment, Daniel, she got it. She got it. She was able to let go, and there was an instantaneous peace that came over her before she left. That's what you wind up seeing, and I believe that's what people are expressing their experiences with the dying. It's not necessarily that the dying is saying, I'm okay now. They show a sense and a sign of peace, be it a light comes over them. A lot of people experience and see lights over people. They get a sense in the room of feeling of warmth and peace and love. They actually can see the soul leave the body. So there is that experience, and it's really dependent upon the person. Okay? You will die the way you live, and that's exactly what I've experienced. So if you want a peaceful death, then you better live a very loving, peaceful life, because that follows you right to the end. So if you have negative attitude or you're holding on to angers, that's going to follow you right until your death, and then you're not going to feel that peace until you get to the other side. But if you're fortunate enough and you're a good enough person, you can feel it before you leave, Daniel.
You know, that's an interesting point that you make about how a person lives is exactly the way they're going to die. You know, you want to have a peaceful death, you better be somebody who has shown a lot of compassion, a lot of giving, selflessness, things like that. Just really someone who enjoyed and embraced what life has brought to you to have, versus someone who takes, someone who feels bitter. I mean, you're someone based on your backstory could certainly have had a life that could have went that direction very easily, and people would say, well, you had a reason for why you are the way you are, but you also knew that you had a choice. Now, I'd like to bring up one particular movie, for instance, where what you're talking about, at least they expressed it in this movie, and that was the movie Ghost, starring Patrick Swayze. And I found it fascinating in this movie when there were a couple of people, including his best friend, when they died, Patrick Swayze, he was already dead. He was a ghost. He was solving basically a mystery as to why he died and what was going on, which is something we'll touch on in a minute. But when you've seen these, for instance, the person who actually shot him and killed him, and then also his friend die, they died pretty violent deaths, and then things just got kind of uglier from there. Is that kind of what happens? Because I found it intriguing. It wasn't so much that their souls went off to, let's say, hell. It was just they were kind of taken off into what you would call the dark shadows. And I was like, wow, that's pretty scary.
I know, exactly. Well, that's based on the concept that there is a hell. And in actuality, and our Pope today, our current Pope, has admitted there is no such thing as hell. Hell is what we create. Actually, those dark demons and spirits are literally that character's own inner demons and spirits that just haunted him at the end there. So we all cross over into a heavenly dimension, but the way we cross over and what we take with us, Daniel, is what matters. You take your personality, you take your issues, and once you get to the other side, you see the big picture, and that big picture can torment you. If you've been a perpetrator, a violator, you've hurt people in this life, you're going to take that with you, and you get to see it and face it. And there is no judgment up there, which is interesting, or out there, wherever you want to call the dimension. You judge yourself. You're responsible for your own judgments. You're responsible for your own assessments. You're responsible for your own, what do you want to do now? Where do you want to go? How much enlightenment do you want? How much do you want to evolve? And we're actually our hardest judges. I kind of think that, wow, that is really karmic there, because we're our worst critics, so we're going to be our worst judges on the other side. And in actuality, all those around us who love us are telling us it's okay. It's okay. Yes, you lived in the physical world. Yes, you made some really negative choices down there, but you are okay here. You've got to understand that. Now, you've got to resolve all of that within you. You've got to fix that in some way. And we aren't able to really stay in that world until we feel deserving and calm and peaceful enough and restitute in that world. But if we feel that we need to make up for something, we'll come back again. We'll have similar relationships with people, because souls migrate from lifetime to lifetime together to take care of those things. So movie Ghost is one of my favorite movies. And the reason why Patrick Swayze actually hung around is because he was in complete, utter shock that he had died, number one, and the fact that the way he died, and he was about ready to be married, and he loved so much.
Yeah, he was in that state of what you'd call a life of perfect harmony and bliss, like everything, like he was, I like that scene. He says, I just don't want the bubble to burst. And you know that's right. When you have the sweetness of life right there. And that's a hard thing to let go.
It is a hard thing to let go. What's interesting, though, I need people to understand this. He never really believed in himself that he had that bliss, Daniel. Because remember, he was never able to say to his girlfriend, his fiancée, I love you. He was never able to express that. That was her biggest complaint about him. So he had inner feelings he never dealt with. That's the other thing that determines how you wind up passing. If you're holding on to things, yes, his life should have been joyous, and it wasn't until it was removed from him that he lost it, that he realized how loving life was, how much he was loved by his fiancée, how much he loved her, how much he was able to, because remember, he always used to say ditto. Whenever she said, I love you, he would say ditto, because he couldn't express it. So afterwards, he recognized it, and then all of a sudden, when he recognized it, the light appeared. So that's the whole thing, is we can even still live a decent life, but if we're harboring ill self-feelings or lack of self-belief and self-love, that can actually cause us to get stuck just as much as some traumatic death can.
Now, that also brings me to what I think is an excellent area to explore when it comes to ghosts in the afterlife. And that is the idea of solving problems. Now, in that particular case, he was trying to figure out, why did I die, discovering eventually that it was his best friend that had that all set up and why.
Right.
And once that was resolved, he seemed to be able to then move on. Now, one popular television show, and one each time there's an episode that pops up, I find myself watching the whole thing, is Ghost Whisperer. I mean, it seems this is a show that's fraught with ghosts basically saying, until I get this resolved in this life, I can't move on.
Right, yes.
So let's talk about that. Is that really what's going on there?
Yes, with some, it certainly is. Again, the trauma of the death, how they died, when they died, somebody killed them, they were hurt, nobody understands. And so that story, that show was produced by James Van Praagh. So a lot of it was different experiences that he had in his early days as a medium, and it was translated into the stories. So, yes, I have had some of those experiences where I have met souls that needed closure, that needed their loved one to understand something, and then was able to move on. So that is the truth. In life, we have, while we're alive, we have a hard time, Daniel, being able to move through our lives after choices we've made and things that happen to us, and we can't let go. We can't let go of the past, not unless we resolve something. Sometimes we get to resolve things. Most of the times we don't get to resolve things, and we get stuck even while we're alive. So if you can imagine that we do that when we're alive, that's going to absolutely happen when we die. Now we even lose more of the chance, and the living lose the chance of finding out if that person really loved them, if that person cared for them, what was going on with that person who died. So it's a healing for both sides, actually.
Now, here's the big thing that a lot of people, as I was saying in the beginning of the program, seem to be on the fences about whether or not ghosts exist, whether the spirits, afterlife, all that really exists. The fact is, I don't know that we're really going to know 100% until our time comes. But the fact is, as I answered the question, why not? Now, I remember back in 2000, or the early part of the 2000s, when I was with the PBS Broadcasting Network, I happened to interview Gary Schwartz, who had written the book The Afterlife Experiments, in which became an HBO documentary. And I believe James Van Praagh, now correct me if I'm wrong, was also involved as one of the mediums that they tested to be able to conduct this experiment to basically investigate whether or not there is life after death. And I've got to tell you, as I was reading the book, it was really fascinating how people were coming to realize, as these mediums were kind of bridging, well, yeah, for instance, your brother or your sister or your wife have been trying to communicate with you. Do you remember something like this? And it would bring you to tears to realize, Jesus, is this really possible? So the proof of afterlife, if you will, how does somebody know whether or not a ghost exists? What is that proof? I guess, what are the conditions we need to have to see ghosts or experience these things in the first place?
Well, interesting. There's a couple of questions all built into that one, Daniel, which is great. First of all, how we even know that there is an afterlife and that we're communicating with spirits as a medium. James Van Praagh was also this way. I've been very much trained in evidential mediumship, which originated in the UK because they go way back in their mediums and years and centuries of talking with the deceased. We like to get pieces of evidence, pieces of proof, that this being is here, and not things that we tap in psychically, but actually feelings and memories of what this person is saying, and identifying information about this person that we see in front of ourselves. So that's called evidential mediumship. That helps us to understand. It helps the person who we're making the connection for to understand that the spirit is actually here. So basically, besides that and maybe some physical mediumship, which is rare, physical mediumship is where actual apparitions can appear. Spirits can appear as apparitions, or they can produce remnants of the past. That's a lot harder to produce. There's a lot of scientific research on that. There's an Afterlife Education Institution in Scottsdale, Arizona that studies all of that. So there's scientific ways of being able to show and get evidence of afterlife, but it's all going to be based on faith and belief anyway, because we're not meant to have 100% proof. Proof would take away our free will and our free choices in what we choose to want to believe and how we live our lives.
I think it also would take away the mystery of living as well, and you take that away, how much fun is that?
Then exactly. Then there is no fun. If we absolutely know the beginning and the ending, then there's no fun in between there. We're the ones that can manifest it and create it. Now, the second part of your question is how we can all tap into that realm and that world. I actually teach that. I have telecourses and in-person courses based on that. It's about, number one, first believing that there is an afterlife. That's the first thing you have to do. You have got to believe that there is something afterwards. Otherwise, you're not going to tap into anything, okay? Then number two, you have to clean out the closet. Within every person are his and her own negatives, doubts, fears, angers, resentments, whatever you want to call them, scars, everything that makes us the negative side of us, not the positive side, but the negative side. That negative side bogs down your mind and closes off your heart. And the channel and reception area to even the psychic realm as well as the deceased realm is your heart. That's where the channel is that you have to open up. So cleaning your closet helps to rid and allow the channel to open up. Then the third thing you need to do is you need to sit in silence and listen. Our minds chatter 24/7. Even when we're asleep, it chatters in our dreams. We have to consciously every day get into the practice of just, even for our own purpose, of biological wellness and mental wellness, is sit there and be quiet for a little bit and then listen. That's part of it. You sit quietly in order to listen. I was at a lecture not too long ago with Suzanne Geisman, who's a famous, well-known medium, and she was doing a presentation, and she had shown, and I always knew this but loved it, that the word silent uses the exact same letters as the word listen, because you have to be silent in order to listen. So you listen for the messages or what people or beings or your loved ones are trying to say to you, your guides, your higher self. And then the fourth step that you must do is to honor, to trust what you're hearing, to trust what's coming to you. We get instinctual messages all the time, every day. It's how we live. Guidance comes first, thoughts come second. But we've gotten so used to thinking out loud and talking ourselves out of our intuitive gut feelings, we've closed off that channel. Intuition is what keeps us alive. Without it, we would cease to exist, Daniel. That's how important it is. So you have to sit and listen and then honor what comes in. Everybody turns around and says, that's my imagination. I'm making that up. You know, they go to a party, right? They get this feeling all of a sudden in the gut of their stomach while they're at the party. And their intellect steps in and it says, okay, what am I feeling? I'm feeling I should leave. And I don't know why, but I just feel that I should leave. All right, they're supposed to shut up and listen to that gut feeling and leave. But no, then they turn around and they say to themselves, oh, that's silly, I'm just being paranoid. And they talk themselves out of the gut feeling. Well, an hour into the party, a fight breaks out, somebody lands on their table, breaks their leg, and they walk out of the party going, why does this always happen to me? I have such bad luck. No, you don't. You have bad listening. You don't listen to your gut feeling. It told you to leave to start with, and you didn't listen. Now you got in trouble, and you want to blame something else for that. It's you. So you've got to trust what comes to you. Sit and listen quietly. Those are the 4 steps that I came up with to be able to do this.
And that's certainly what Native Americans also say is when you need to solve a problem, just sit and listen to the forest.
Yes, absolutely. It's even in the Bible, be still and know that I am. That's exactly what it meant. That's what the God source, that's what Jesus, that's what all of the spiritual teachers said. Sit and listen, and you get the message and the knowing.
Now, I think what's really a wonderful paradox are the people who start out as skeptics about all this, but then once they have proof, if you will, they become, very hardcore believers. And I'll give you an idea, for instance. Back, this would probably be about 5 years ago, give or take, is we did a show on the afterlife of Billy Fingers. It was a book about how
yes, I know that.
Ann Keegan, her bad boy brother, proved to me that there's life after death, and that's exactly what she felt like, is that she was skeptical, like, am I going nuts? But to give you an idea how much people really are on the positive side versus, oh, this is all just quackery and nuts, is when you take a look at, because we posted that interview up on YouTube, and the ratio is this, 469 likes to 18 dislikes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hell of a ratio on 55,000 views.
Yes, Daniel, there is a consciousness shift that's been going on for the past decade, and it's moving more towards people understanding there's more to life than just this physical world. It is metaphysical. That's exactly what the word means, more than the physical. And they're realizing that because they realize that there's more to them than just their physical body. So they're opening up, and now, of course, with television shows and interviews and the Internet, there's more positive information about it, and I'm tending to see people believe in it more. It's natural. It's not something unnatural. This is the stuff that we used to believe in. Then we got to a time period where everybody was talked out of it because they needed something to blame for their misfortune, so they were talking about all of this stuff, and now we're coming back to it. So it's not new information, it's antique information, it's old ancient wisdom that people have been tapped into. Now, what tends to give it the bad rap is the woo-woo stuff, about people who talk about possession and you can be cursed and I can curse you and for $2,000 I can get the curse removed, or you've got spirits that are attached to you and that's why your life is so bad and it's so negative. No, we don't. We need any excuse we can to keep us from making the higher choices in life. We're responsible completely for our own lives and what happens to it. There is no victimization on this earth because this earth is not random, and therefore victimization and randomness, that would go together, but non-randomness is like oil and vinegar. It doesn't mix with victimization. We manifest everything. And so we're beginning to understand that. We're beginning to understand we have control, and we need to understand that as soon as possible so that we can take control of what's going on right now.
Well, I certainly agree with you about that, as the fact that every step we take forward is based on a decision we make in that particular moment. But the question is, do you make that decision based on that real moment, or is it based on a past experience, or is it based on the possibility of a future outcome? And it's kind of a funny world that we have to straddle. But what I'd like to talk about there, you brought up possession, and there's another realm that a lot of people become concerned with, because this also borders where it seems religion kind of comes into the mix, and religion is certainly, deservedly in many ways, we're talking about highly organized religion, has created a very bad rap for itself by saying, well, if you live a life this way, this is the outcome when you die. And you've got to go through me to get to God, so to speak. Otherwise, forget about it. It's not going to work. But let's go back to the idea of possession. Now, there's a couple of friends we have that you could consider to be mediums, if you will, or intuitives, however you want to give them the term. But she talked about one of them. She is a Native American, I believe, Cherokee, and her job from time to time, and when she is called, is to sort of exercise a place, maybe a house. And she described one particular incident that she was dealing with up in Washington where there was a little girl who was really creating a lot of havoc. And this family was in this home that they really loved, and she went and said, look, you need to kind of move on, really. She was telling this little spirit girl. And she said, it was a little rough. This girl would not let go and was looking into the past of what the holding on was, and it actually went back, I guess, a century or so, that she was actually a Native American herself. And it was quite a fascinating story that we had on the program, but she says she knew that the little girl was free as she simply went out and seen an infinity sign, which was created by flying crows that were leaving in the sky. Now, that's pretty phenomenal.
Is that? Yes, that is.
Now, let's talk
phenomenal.
about that. The idea of possession, I mean, one famous movie that's out there, well, there are a couple of them. You've got The Exorcist starring Linda Blair, but you also have the Amityville Horror, which is a pretty phenomenal one as well.
Yes, I lived in Long Island right near the town of Amityville and went to see that house.
What are the odds I'd bring that up? I think we've got ghosts communicating to guide this show. So
there you go, of course. One of the first comment that I would like to make is based on religion. Any of your religions and your organized religions, it's not the religion that has ever caused the problem. It's humans interpreting it.
I agree with you 100% on that. I really
do.
Right. So it's like Christianity. They get beat up, but the fact is when you look at Christianity as a whole, it's a beautiful religion. So
yes, not to mention that Bible in particular, the Bible, has been torn apart so many times, and the gentleman that we're talking about that said the only way to God is through me, no, he didn't. He never said it that way. What he said, I and my Father are one. I am the way and the truth and the life, and the rest of the sentence that we cut off were, and so are you. Okay, he came down here to teach us who we were, not who he was. So we didn't want to accept that, and so we changed it all around. Now, as far as possession and stuff like that, I am not, and it's the one thing that I have learned truly. In your physical world, we can always examine, and you hear me constantly compare the metaphysical world with the physical world, okay, the living. In the living, isn't it possible for somebody to be listening? There's so symbiotic relationship that they have that another person can literally talk for them. They talk for them. They think for them. They don't make a decision without asking that other person, right? Haven't we heard stories like that and relationships like that between people of the living?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's how it works between a living and a deceased. It's the same way. There is no way that an entity enters a body, not unless you absolutely willingly let it in. I trance a higher self and spirit, an ascended master. I allow that spirit to basically use my thoughts in order to convey a message, and then I'm speaking the message. But that spirit is not taking control of my body and manipulating me. That just doesn't happen. There are those that believe that that can be done, but it doesn't happen. I'm the one that's still choosing to use my body. I'm the one that's still choosing to manipulate it. And there are those, and a lot of these stories seem to happen with children, okay? Children that come from very loving, peaceful backgrounds, for some odd reason, never experience anything like that. But children who come from abused backgrounds, tormented backgrounds, similar to what I went through and even worse than me, they tend to be the ones that get controlled by these demons. Well, I hate to tell you that there is no such thing as a demon or the devil. The devil was actually introduced to the Bible in the Middle Ages when the church lost their power over the people and the land. It became feudal period. The knights in shining armor protected everybody of the lands. Nobody needed the church anymore. The church lost its power. In order to get people back into the church, they had to create a paranormal being that a knight could not take care of. And that's when the devil was first introduced into the Bible. It's never written, Lucifer, the falling angel, never in the original Bibles, okay? So therefore, there's no demons. However, I can tell you this. We are capable of being our own demons. We are capable of being so evil. I mean, look at what's happening on the earth today. There is no devil doing that. Those are humans making those lower choices to hurt and kill people. Those are their own inner demons. So now you take a child or a young person who has been tormented so much, and the human mind and brain is so powerful, it's capable of protecting itself. The two highest function is to keep you alive and to protect you. Well, it will protect your mental state any way it can by creating defense mechanisms, by creating stories, by creating beliefs, anything that tends to shield you from the terrible feelings you have about yourself. So it can produce angers and resentments and bad behavior. It can do all of that you project out there. And yes, of course, we want to call these children possessed. We also want to say that the majority of children that are in school today have ADD and ADHD because the teachers can't teach them. So what are they all possessed as well? We tend to label what we cannot help. And so that's what winds up happening. Nobody can get possessed unless you're absolutely willing to listen to it, go along with it. Now, that's not to say that a ghost can come up to you and incite your negativity and make it worse. They exacerbate it. It's the Watercooler Effect is what I call it. It's like when you're in an office and somebody's at the water cooler, two employees, and they start talking about the boss and they get really negative and upset. Somebody else comes along for water and joins in on the conversation. Now you got three upset people, even worse, and a fourth one. And before long, the entire office wants to go out on strike, right?
Exactly.
Right. Well, that's exactly what happens with a human when they're negative, they're having an argument, they're having this anger, and yes, and spirits are out there exacerbating it. What you see happening in the United States today or anywhere in the world, there is so much negativity out there, it's feeding into people's negativity. So if they're negative and hateful or angry to start with, they're going to be even more angry, more hateful, because that energy is in the world, it's surrounding it. It's even feeding into the environment and causing these incredible storms that we've been experiencing, right? So that's what can happen individually. But as far as the actual concept, the way we put it on TV and make it in movies of possession like that, no, it's not like that. It's not a devil. It's not demons. It's your own inner angers. It's your own inner things. And I've had many clients who absolutely insisted that the whole reason why their life was screwed up is because they were told that this negative entity is following it. I'm like, no, your life is screwed up because you haven't been making good choices. Don't be blaming it on some spirit. Take responsibility. I promise you the spirit will be gone.
Not to mention, too, I've discovered many years ago that the moment that you begin taking 100% responsibility for every particular thing that happens in your life begins to get a lot easier for you.
Of course
it's pretty
it does.
Weird how that works, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is, Daniel. We're not bad beings, for goodness sakes. There's nothing that we can do that is really so terrible that we can't change it and make up for it, not even killing and death. And I'm not condoning it by any stretch of the means. But the reason why we go that far is because we think we need to protect something. We've forgotten we're magnificent divine beings. And as long as you forget that, you feel less than. You feel it's actually the Cain and Abel story from the Bible. That's exactly who we are. We're both Cain and we're both Abel. Those stories are metaphysical. And that story is when you forget who you are, you feel detached from your higher source, that divine part of you. You feel resentful, you feel rejected, you feel abandoned, you feel angered, you feel like Cain. When you're attached to that source, you feel loved, you feel loving, you feel kind, you feel compassionate, you feel like Abel. And that pain of being detached and not knowing who you are can be so painful it can overtake and kill off the kindness in you. And that's the whole purpose of that story, is to tell us that capacity. And my goodness, I have heard such incredible stories of what people have gone through growing up and the abuse that I can make a book of that alone. Nobody would want to read it because they wouldn't believe it, first of all, and number two, it would be so friggin' depressing they'd want to shoot themselves after they read that. It's terrible what people have been through in their lives, and so I'm not surprised to see it coming out the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is one last movie I'd like to reference, and I've at least got a couple of callers on the line, but we have time at least to bring one on to where maybe perhaps they can ask you a question or two,
Sure.
Vincent, if that's okay. But
yes.
One of the movies came out in the early part of the 1990s, and it's one I get the biggest kick out of it. It's called Defending Your Life.
Oh, my God, I can't believe you're saying that. Oh, my God, Daniel, my favorite movie. I just met one of the producers of that movie. Oh, my gosh.
And one of my favorite scenes, since we were talking about, is there a hell, is I like the scene where Albert Brooks is actually asking Rip Torn, who's his lawyer, if you will. He says, is there a hell? And he says, no, there really isn't a hell, but I understand Los Angeles is getting pretty close.
Yes, I love it. I love that one. And I also love when they go to the past life pavilion.
Right, and what was funny is I was actually reading Shirley MacLaine during that time, about her afterlife and metaphysics and so forth. And so when they show her introducing what the Afterlife Pavilion was, I cracked up laughing. I was just like, oh, my goodness.
Just on that. It was perfect. It was perfect timing. And you see, you and I have a lot in common there, Daniel, because so many of the movies that you're referencing I absolutely adore. And even the Shirley MacLaine, she actually came out of the spiritual closet at the exact same time at 28 years old when I experienced this. And what kept me from feeling that I was going nuts was she appeared on Oprah Winfrey and she shared her experiences. And I'm like, holy cow, I had never read, I didn't know anything about this stuff, didn't have any interest. I was a professional entertainer and actor and wanted a Tony Award and an Academy Award. That's all I cared about. And then this happened to me, and she comes out on the show one day. I'm watching it. I never watch Oprah because I'm working during the day. And one day I watched it, and there's Shirley MacLaine talking about it, and she normalized what I went through. It was an amazing experience.
And also because we talked earlier about how spirits come and they leave messages or they leave hints or signs that, you are actually being looked out after. And when you're going in the right direction, they certainly leave messages that tell you that, hey, you're on the right path. Mm-hmm. And certainly when you're on the wrong path, for you, that is, the reason you're supposed to be here, you experience that pain, and life gets hard. That doesn't mean that going your direction is easy, but it's fulfilled with passion enough to get you over those tough moments to keep you moving. And I think that's why we become inspired by people who are in entertainment, and you hear those backstories about, no, this wasn't easy. Nobody said it was easy. Why we're inspired by athletes who overcome tremendous odds and adversities to go on to become champions. We're inspired by that because inside of us, what we see are people that truly have pursued their passion, and the passion meaning they have the motivation, the energy, and the insight to overcome those obstacles to get to where they wanted to go. That's where they were meant to go. And, certainly I've had my own messages, and I've shared my particular story as I first decided to break into radio years ago. Something I always wanted to do. I finally decided in my early 30s, it's about time I do something about this. And the one special message I had for me was really unique. I'm just driving on my way to pick up my daughter. It was a nice sunny day. I was excited about a particular guest that was going to be coming in the studio. I couldn't believe the people that I was actually meeting in person and interviewing right off the bat as soon as I started pursuing this passion, because I thought it would be, a harder, different road than it was. It just seemed to all come so easily. But here it was, I'm listening to, I think it was M. Scott Peck, A Book on Tape, The Road Less Traveled of all things, and I'm kind of in this neat little daze, And then all of a sudden, I kind of pull focus as I'm driving, and I swear this is what I actually read. On the back of a van, the license plate was broken down kind of in a text message, and this is what it said: "God bless you." And
Wow.
I was like, what are the odds of that?
No, it's not unless you're meant to receive a message.
Yeah, exactly. And it was telling me, hey, see, you're happy. This is what we've been telling you. This is what you should be doing with your life.
Which brings up a perfect point that you're making. Yes, it is hard work and the passion that you need to put into it in order to get to that place. But the point is, it's an easy thing to accomplish your dreams. It's a hard thing getting to the point of believing that. We are entitled to abundance in everything, abundance in vocation and happiness and well-being and finance and relationships. But because we have forgotten who we are struggling through our lives and making it so difficult on ourselves to get to finally believe in ourselves. Because you just said it in the same breath. You turned around and said, I can't believe once I was on this road how easy it was.
And it
once you got to
too.
the road. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Once you get on your path, once you start using the Force like Yoda said in Star Wars, which, by the way, is a movie about us, I finally got to know. My theory was George Lucas was a very spiritual and metaphysical person, and a friend of mine knows him personally, and I was absolutely right. That story was written about us. It's a contemporary story of the Cain and Abel story, and both Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker, are us, and we are meant to learn to use that force, which is the God force, in order to create our lives. But it can work for us or it can work against us. Once you tap into it and learn how to use it, it becomes an easy thing after that. But you are right. It takes great effort and internalized passion and work to never give up, knowing that you are that magnificent being and working through your own blocks, your own inner demons, your own fears and doubts to finally get to that stage. Once you do, it's easy breezy the rest of the way.
Now, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'd like to bring one of our callers on and see how she can, what she'd like to ask you. This will be Joy joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. You're on the air with Vincent. Joy.
Hey, Joy. Nice to meet you, hon. What can I help you with?
Oh, hi. I actually have a few short questions, if that's okay.
Well, yes, good. Let's start with one first.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to find out, some of it has to do with death. After we die, do we get a review of how we've affected people in our lifetime, especially if we don't see, how our intentions have affected them?
Yeah, and here's the review. We go through that review ourselves. We feel the need. We feel the desire. We usually have love guides around us, be it angels, whatever you want to call them, that are watching over us as we review our lives. And we literally go through day by day, moment by moment, seeing what we did, what we didn't do. And we go, oh, my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, well, this was good. Okay, that's pretty good. But, oh, look at what I forgot over here, and I didn't say this, and I didn't say that, and look at how I hurt this person and that person. Absolutely. You do the review yourself. Then what you do with it afterwards is also completely up to you. You can be in restitution, which means, ooh, I didn't feel good about those choices I made. Those are not good choices. I'll never make choices like that again. Or retribution. Oh, I can't get over this. I'm going to have to go back down there, and I'm going to have her do something to me to make up for it because I'm just not able to let go of this. That's up to you. But restitution and mercy are always the best choices. But yes, you're right. So go ahead. What was your second question?
Okay, my second question is, my son had passed away a little over a year ago at the age of 21. And we didn't realize he had a different kind of heart, kind of a strangely created heart.
Right, yeah.
And
well,
so
I
with
will,
physical exertion, he pushed a couch because he was paranoid. I was wondering, I know he died pushing the couch because his heart gave out immediately. Was he born with some kind of a trauma the lifetime before?
Actually, it's the opposite. Your son was a very special boy and a special soul because he came into this world to clear up some of the past, and it was all about love. And because the heart is your love center, and it was all about love from the past, and he wanted to create love this time around, especially in you and his father. He wanted you both to take a spiritual journey. A lot of times, children, when they come into the world and they die young, and 21 is still a child, and when they die that young, it usually is to serve two purposes. One, they're cleaning the slate and taking on something from the past that they want to make up for. But two, they want to help those people that are most important in their lives, and that's usually the parents. Many times when children pass, there is such a pain that the parents will look towards God, will look towards some spiritual understanding which helps them along in their lives for the rest of their lives. Yes, now, it also works in opposite. It doesn't always work that way. A lot of times parents can break up. Parents can't deal with it, one parent or the other parent. But in your case, I'm feeling that your son wanted to pay a great debt to you both and wants you to search and open your heart to new beliefs. Make your hearts stronger. Make your hearts stronger. So he came in with a weak heart in order to learn how to love. It's the same thing as people who come in blind are meant to learn how to see inward. People who are deaf are meant to learn how to hear inward. People who have a physical heart condition are meant to learn how to love and give love or cause love in some way. I would say that when your son was younger, he was very open and loving to others, or maybe trusting of others. Is that correct?
Yes, but then when he turned into his early teens, it's almost like he had Asperger's from a set of inoculations, several inoculations.
I know it seems that way. I know. I understand that. I understand how that can seem to happen, a predisposition. But then he shut off to the outer world so that the outer world can start doing some speaking and interpreting. I don't believe that autistic or children or Asperger's children are diseased children. I think that they're extremely insightful children who've learned how to communicate a different way. And just because we don't accept them in our society doesn't mean that they're the ones that are misfunctioning. See, we judge everything based on what we think everybody is supposed to be acting like. But quite honestly, in this world today, there's no great whoops being associated with it with some people. Of course, we're here to help, and we certainly can be able to help in the world, but it's not like everything is going hunky-dory today, that it's such a great deal to be a part of it. A lot of people are closing off in many different ways. I'm saying to you that your son was about love, and that I'm feeling that for you both, a journey of love and understanding is going to open yourself up to be able to hear him, see him, and I believe there'll even be something written about it that you're going to take on as an endeavor.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Can I ask another question?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Okay.
As long as we have time, go ahead.
Yeah, we have just a few minutes left here.
I know. You're the producer, aren't you?
Yes, I am. It's just my son has been affecting me for a while. I do accept death, yes. So I was okay. I don't grieve like other people normally do. But anyway, we decided to move from Oregon to Arizona when he died because I didn't really have a need to be in Oregon. I don't have a child to raise anymore. And I have another child, too, who's a young adult. So I'm turning 50 in December, and I've done a lot already, even spiritually. and professionally. What do you see that I could be doing to revive my passion and purpose?
You're a teacher and a helper.
Yes, you're right about the teaching part.
Yes, and so you're meant to do that, and it's in your experience and your ability to share it. I just finished saying in Arizona there is a research institute, an Afterlife Research Institute. I'm going to actually be out there next year at their symposium.
Nice.
Yes, so there is need to be able to help people in the world understand death as well as understand life and how to deal with loss, because many people have become angered by it, whereas you seemed, like I said, here you are moving on to want to do something. Your son is causing that. It was within you, but it definitely is. He's assuring it, that's for sure, and helping you all along the way here. So I believe you're going to be a spiritual teacher, a spiritual helper in some way. You'll be doing some educating, some speaking to others, putting together either a support group or a mentoring group of people that you can talk with, and that's where the writing is coming in. But you're going to be a spiritual teacher and helper. That's exactly the direction I see you going in at this point.
Oh, okay.
And I believe your son is part of the greatest help there. And there's so many. I mean, Daniel just mentioned the one book about Billy, and there's so many wonderful books out there. Keep opening your heart. I promise you he wants to talk with you.
Oh.
He's been talking with you on a deeper level. When he started having the symptoms of Asperger's, you were still hearing him within.
Uh-huh.
And you can hear him more now than even before, and he'll guide you and give you the messages and the things to even write about.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I have to pass you on to Dan.
Go ahead. Thank you.
That certainly was
sharing.
fascinating to listen to there. There's no doubt about that, Vincent. It's been a pleasure to have you on the program today. There's so much more we could talk about when it comes to this.
Forever. I know. And you and I, Daniel, too. I mean,
no kidding.
we can keep listing these wonderful inspirational movies.
Well,
Everybody
there's that.
should
And the
watch.
other thing I thought about, too, is when we think about mediums, perhaps we'll have you back on the program again so we can talk about mediumship, how to find the right ones, because I remember Harry Houdini was famous about shaking a lot of these guys down,
Well, he was looking for a physical medium,
right,
and
exactly.
those physical mediums are the ones you want to avoid. You
right.
do not need to go to a physical medium, a regular evidential medium, and just like you choose a doctor, use your intuition. So I may be begging the question here, you need to tap into your instinct in order to find somebody who's really instinctive.
Exactly.
But you got to use that.
Someone who just works for you, definitely.
Yes,
I completely
definitely.
like a good friend. Now, Vincent, is there a website, a place people can go to find out about your work, maybe how they can connect with you, things like that?
Absolutely, and they can even see some of my other media appearances around the country that I made, healing haunted places, and that's at vincentgenna.com. And that's VINCENTGENNA.com. They can connect with me there. They can find my Facebook page, and they can communicate with me. I've got a lot of information on there to help inspire and empower people, so they can reach out anytime.
Very good. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. It's been
Daniel,
wonderful.
It's been more than a pleasure. Thank you so much, and happy Halloween to everybody.
And to you, too, as well.
Thank you.
Because there's a little witch in all of us.
Yes, there is, yes.
I want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. Hope you all enjoy your Halloween as well. Enjoy the celebration of it as well. You can also visit us at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. Find out what we're up to and sign up for our weekly e-newsletter to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.